Hey guys, I've had the EVGA SC15 for about a week. Figured I would do a quick video review, let you know what I like, what I don't like about it, and who I think this laptop is best for. Once out of the box, I immediately noticed the build quality of the EVGA SC15. With an all-metal body design supported by an aluminum chassis, this has to be one of the heaviest laptops in its class, sitting at 6.5 pounds. Although that weight is forgiven once you see what's on the inside of it. Hold on a second. I can't stand these stickers. Give me a second and I'll take it off. Never gets old. Anyways, the internals on this laptop are solid, even almost a year post-release. It comes with an i7-7700HQ CPU, a GTX 1060 GPU, 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, a 256GB PCIe SSD, and a terabyte HDD. The power button is tucked safely in the top right corner, placed away from any commonly used keys, so you won't have to worry about pressing it on accident. Boot up is lightning fast thanks to the PCIe SSD that I mentioned earlier. Usually boot up takes around 9 to 10 seconds max, which is actually pretty fast even for an SSD. For me, the biggest calling card of this laptop is definitely the display. It's rocking a 120Hz 1080p IPS panel that's supported by G-Sync, so that means you won't have any screen tearing even when you can't hit that 120 frames per second. Now once you actually hit that steady 120 frames, whether it be in a less graphically demanding game like Rocket League or even on the desktop just moving your mouse around, it really does change the experience. It's hard to explain. I included a link in the description. It's a good website that kind of shows you exactly the difference between 30 frames, 60 frames, 120, etc. In my opinion, EVGA's best decision with this laptop was choosing the desktop-grade GTX 1060 over their mobile variant, the Max-Q design 1060. To put it in perspective, the desktop grade 1060 like the one on this laptop will get on average 10 to 15 more frames per second than that of a Max-Q design 1060 like you'd find in a Dell Inspiron 7577. This extra bit of power is really helpful in helping me hit 120 frames steadily on games like Rocket League, and even on a game like PUBG on Ultra, I can hit a 60 or 70 frames pretty consistently, not dropping below the mid-50s. So I figured I'd pull up Afterburner and show this performance graph between both very low settings and ultra settings in PUBG. On the left is the very low settings, on the right is ultra. So you can see the difference in performance. Here you have the frame rate. As you can see, it's hitting a steady 120, but it's good to know you can actually hit the top frame rate in a game like PUBG. Now when you move to ultra, it does hamper the performance quite a bit. I would expect a range within 60 frames per second. Now the GPU temperature and the CPU temperature between both settings stayed below 70, which is great. Moving up here, you can see that the GPU usage hit its ceiling while on Ultra. As you can tell by the icons on the up and down arrow keys, you can overclock and underclock this laptop. So basically all you need to do is hit the FN and the up arrow, and you will have your laptop overclocked to about 100 megahertz over the normal clock. You can also underclock it, that's just FN and the down arrow. It's also worth mentioning that you get a free mouse with the purchase of this laptop. I personally am not a huge fan of this mouse. It's pretty much made of complete plastic. The buttons on either side are super easy to click when you're just moving your thumb around. So personally, I would not recommend buying this gaming mouse separately, but it's good when you have this laptop, you can just throw it in your backpack and not worry about it getting scuffed or damaged when you have a backup mouse. EVGA also includes the Precision Mobile software. Essentially, it's just a pre-installed application that is a dashboard for overclocking. My favorite application is using that fan boost button. Here's an idea of what it sounds like. Now if we close the lid and flip it over, I'll show you what EVGA included, which I think is actually pretty smart. It's these foam pads on the back. Essentially you just stick it to the bottom of the laptop and it acts as a protective layer as well as ventilation for the bottom fans down here. One of the areas I feel like EVGA could have improved on this laptop is definitely the keyboard. My main issues is that the arrow keys are too small and the numpad is really not necessary. Otherwise, the keyboard is pretty much fine. It's what you expect nowadays with gaming laptops. Nothing that'll blow you away, but it's a very solid keyboard. Now I included this close shot so you can hear what it sounds like. And yes, as you can tell by now, the keyboard does support RGB lighting. Now it's not individual per key lighting, it's zone lighting. So it's this zone right here, the WASD, the surrounding keys. You have the arrow keys as well, and finally the rest of the keyboard. Because this laptop is all metal, I would expect zero flex on the keyboard or near the trackpad. Speaking of which, the trackpad is not too bad, and as far as buttonless trackpads go, this is one of the better ones I've seen. It's definitely not as good as a MacBook, but it's solid. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the speakers. They're located on the top along the keyboard and on the bottom two corners. The way I see it, they just don't have enough bass, and once you hit a certain level of volume, they become distorted. And I'm using this music video by Amine to show off the screen quality and the audio quality. So, in the end, I would say that this laptop is perfect for the gamer who doesn't worry about battery life, because with this desktop grade GTX 1060, you should only expect 2 or 3 hours of battery life. So if you're like me and you plan to use it exclusively on a charger, then you're perfect. And did I mention the battery pack is gigantic?